Welcome along everybody. Today I'm going to show you how I made this card, which I've called Passenger. So we'll get started. For this card I've used the Field Floral set, the On the Fence stamp set. Sorry, I've had to print them off like this so you can see them better. The Dear Dear set and the Wildflower Wood set. And I've also, to frame my card, I've used the Frame Square stencil set, the largest frame in there. You don't have to put the frame down, but I think it makes this work particularly look nice with the frame. As usual, there'll be a full list of all the inks that I use and the stamp sets in the comments column. I'm going to be using Distress Oxides for this, Versafine, Clair and Versafine, and this is all done with blending techniques and stamping. So we'll get going, and I'm going to start off with my Wild Honey colour, Distress Oxide, and I'm going to be using one of these big brushes, big blending brushes. If you haven't got one of these big blending brushes, don't worry, because you can use any blending brush you've got, or even if you want to, the baby wipe technique I've showed you before. So I'm just going to rub a little bit of that off onto a piece of paper, and then I'm going to blend it to the top of my card. And I'm just going to do that to start with because I want to get an idea of where I want to put my deer. So that's all I'm going to do for now. And just put the lid back on, and then I'm going to take my deer, and I want him to be sort of about here on the picture. So I'm going to stamp him up in Versafine Onyx Black. Now you don't have to use black for this, you can use the Versafine Fallen Leaves. The one thing I will say to you, it has to be an archival ink because we're going to blend over it, but also this Versafine pad I've got is fairly old, so it's quite dry. If you're going to use a brand new one, just give the deer a little bit of time to dry before you carry on blending, just in case you smudge the ink. Okay, so I'm going to place I think I'll turn that the other way around, and I want the deer to be sort of about there in my picture, and I don't want the bottom of his feet, so I'm just going to lose those in the paper and then stamp like that. Press hard, as I've told you before, let the ink absorb into the paper or card, and then we have a nice impression. You see, it doesn't really matter about that, we can cover it up, and if you don't, if you get all the feet in, don't worry, you can cover it up afterwards. Now, because I haven't got the luxury of time, I'm just going to blot that a little bit with a piece of kitchen roll because I'm going to blend over it. So you can see my ink pad's old, it dries almost instantaneously. But if you're doing this with a new ink pad, just let your deer dry for a little bit. So now we're going to carry on with the blending. So I'm going to carry on with my Wild Honey colour. Again, I'm going to rub a bit on this blend and then just rub it off onto, just show you what I'm doing, rub it off onto a piece of paper, and then I'm going to take this all the way down, right over, like this. So we're now covering the deer. You know, try and avoid the deer if you can, but obviously we want the colour all around him, so like that. And then I'm going to use different shades now on this. So at the top I'm going to take some fossilized amber, and I'm just going to go over that at the top of my picture. There's a little bit of something on there, I don't know what it is. So there, so I'm just going to go over that, and I'm also going to use a little bit of this fossilized amber on the bottom here, like that. And then I'm going to take my vintage photo, which is this colour, and this is quite a lot darker, so make sure you blend off onto a piece of paper first. And then I'm just going to run this along the top because I want there to be a sort of almost like a fading down effect, an ombre effect. So I'm going to put that like that, and then I'm going to take some spiced marmalade, distress oxide, and I'm going to put that coming up from the deer, sort of here, up across the back, because this is where I want the more orangey colour to be. So that's going to go across there like that. And now you can already see there's a contrast started to develop there. So we'll just go in with a little bit more of that. And really, it's up to you how dark, light you make this, you know, what sort of contrast you want. You know, I think the thing is just as you're shading, keep going back and having a look and see where you've got to. I'm going to use a little bit of fossilized amber again in the middle here. So we've got the three, but you can see how they're all sort of merging into one colour, and you get sort of patches of the lighter colour, patches of the darker colour. And then I'm just going to take a look at it. I think we'll have some of the vintage photo, a bit more of that here. Oh no, I'm moving my card up at the top. That's it. And then a bit more in that corner there. And then just blend it down so you get a nice transition between the colours. And then on the bottom, I'm going to use the vintage photo, and I'm going to go in all across the bottom, quite dark, because this is where we're going to put our foliage. So we want, not only do we want a contrast with the top of the card, but we also want to put all our foliage in here. So we're going to put in the vintage photo in. We want it to come up the sides a little bit, not too far above the deer's head. So we want to keep it, if we can, below the antlers of the deer. So we're going to put some more up on that side. And a little bit there. And then I'm going to, this seems a bit odd, but I'm going to then use little bits of orange every now and again, because what we'll do is we'll probably go in just with the darker shades once we've stamped our foliage in. But we just want to get those different textures and shades in now. And then I'm going to go up more with some orange coming up from the base of the where the foliage is going to be. And then I'm just going to go across the middle part with a little bit of the wild honey again, just across the middle here. But you get the idea. So really the amount of orange, the amount of the, you know, the way you want to shade it is entirely up to you, really. You make your own mind up. So now we've got most of the base shading done. So we're going to go in with our stamp, and it's this stamp, which is very versatile. Now I'm going to stamp this up using Versafine clair. I'm just going to put a bit of paper here so you can see what I'm doing. Now this is a new ink pad, so this is very juicy. So I'm going to stamp it all up, and then I'm just going to lay a bit off on there, because you can see it's a very dark colour. And then we go in just randomly, secondary stamping, double stamping. Now I'm going to keep my stamp on the block for now, while I just do the initial stamping. But then you're going to see in a minute, I'm going to actually take it off the block. Don't be afraid to stamp off your tape, because you don't want all these the same size. So, and don't worry where it's not taking, because that's what I'm going to take the stamp off the block in a minute and stamp that it makes it more flexible. So you'll see that technique in a minute. And then I'm still taking a little bit of ink off, and then we go up the sides, and then we a little bit, try not to actually stamp the deer if you can help it, but just where the deer is, like that. And then I think we're just going to do one more on the block there. I'm just going to, again, stamp it off, and then... And this is what happens when you, sometimes when you're using a stencil, where the stencil edge is, you see you get a gap. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my stamp off, and I have shown you this technique before. It's a bit messy, but so you just have to watch your fingers. And then we stamp it up. And then again, just lay that ink off. Or you can do that on the block and then take the stamp off. And then you see you can manipulate it into the areas it hasn't covered already. And then we'll do that again. And then we'll go down here. And it doesn't matter if it's a little bit messy, because we're going to blend a little bit of this away anyway. So, and we want to cover the deer's feet, so we want to go up to there, and we want a little bit behind him so it doesn't look like he's sort of floating in midair, like that. And then I think a bit more up that side. Now obviously, as I always say to you, I'm a little bit time constrained with these videos. Just take your time, because you know, you do get your work will turn out better if you spend a little bit more time on it. And I'm just going to push that into the side there. Now, as you can see, it's obviously a little bit patchy. I'm going straight on now with the front, because obviously the front it would be darker anyway. And just move that up there. So what I'm going to do now is just blend that where I've stamped with a dry baby wipe. I'm just going to blend in that bottom bit here. So just, and you can pick a bit off your stencil, and then we just work that around to blend it a little bit and up into the picture a little bit. And then I'm going to take the ink on my baby wipe, just rub it off, and then just go in, and that just creates a sort of edge where the frame is. It just gives, it sort of grounds the whole picture, so you get an idea of perspective. And again, I'll just show that. So I wiped a bit off the ink pad, and then I'm just going to wipe it off onto there, and then go in and blend. And then we just do little bits here and there, and because I've stamped quite a lot of his foot, I'm actually going to go in and try and cover that up a little bit, because I don't really want a lot of that to show, like that. And then when you've done that, so I'm happy that I've sort of covered up his feet, but obviously I've also covered up where the foliage is, so all we do is go back in with our stamp and just re-stamp that, just there and there, randomly like that. Okay, now this all looks a bit one-dimensional at the moment, and this is why I like to introduce another colour when I'm stamping foliage, because I don't know if you notice some of the green ones I do, I always use at least 2 colours of green, sometimes 3, because I think that when you stamp over, you get that different look. So I'm going to stamp over with the fossilized amber, and I'm going to use this stamp. So I'm just going to ink it up, and this time I'm going straight on to my picture with the ink. So this is quite a delicate little stamp, so you can get away with this, doing this. Don't worry, try not to get the stalks in, but if you do, don't worry, because you can just sort of blend them away like that. And then I'm going to just randomly stamp little bits of this So if you notice that if you just want the tip, just dip the tip in, and then if you want more, you dip more in like that. And then I'm just going to randomly dot that. And what this does, it gives you that 2 different colours. So when you actually look at this, it will then start to look a little bit more 3D. Okay, and then do exactly the same as we did with the fallen leaves. You just take a little bit on your baby wipe and then just do little patches like that, just to give slight different colour. And then look at it and you think, you know, am I happy with that? I think I'd like a little bit more prominent foliage at the front. So I'm going to go back in with this stamp. This time, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you. I'm going to put this on here. Sorry, it's a bit messy now. I'm going to put that on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, using the vintage photo again, I'm actually going to just ink up the bottom of it. Can you see? Not the top, just the bottom. And just blot it this time because I do want it to be quite dark, and then I'm going to place it on my picture there, and then I'm going to just go along the bottom just to create, because otherwise if there's nothing there it looks a little bit odd. So just to get that idea, as we've done in the past, that you're sort of looking over this to beyond. And now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of the fallen leaves, and then I'm going to stamp that on there. Now bearing in mind this is a lot stronger ink, so again blot and then go back where you've just been and just lay that over. And all you're doing really now, using the 2 different colour inks, the vintage photo and the fallen leaves, is you're creating, sort of building up the layers, which again gives it that sort of 3D look. And I'm just going to put that there like that. And I'm going to do one on the other side with the whole bit in, the longer bit in as well. Now I think that's enough. Obviously, look at your work. As I always say to you, you know, when you're working and your head's down, you don't always see, you know, what's right in front of your eyes. So, you know, take a look at it, take a bit of a breather and take a look and see that you're happy with it. And then the last thing I'm going to do before I put the bird on is I'm just going to take a little bit of this Versafine fallen leaves, because I'd like there to be a more defined line at the bottom. And I'm going to rub it off onto my stencil tape, and then just at the very bottom, almost to create this natural border, because I did do it before but I don't feel it was dark enough. So I'm just going to rub that along the bottom, which will create, I'm hoping, a nice edge when we remove the actual stencil. And then I think we'll just have a little bit going up there, and maybe a little bit here and there. Okay, so that's all the background done. And then I'm going to take my little bird, and he really is tiny, look, and I'm going to stamp him in, again, in the Versafine Onyx. I'm doing it in the black. You can do it in the brown if you want to. It's entirely up to you. But he'll need quite a good inking because he's quite little. And then you have to sort of be careful, place him on the back of the deer like that. And there's the little bird looking over. If you want to define, see at the back there where some of the grasses have, we can just do little lines in with a black fineliner. If you're a bit nervous about going over the deer, keep going over the deer with your stamp. So we just add those in there, and then maybe a few here just to give it a bit of continuity. So we finished all the inking and the stamping, so I'm going to move all those out the way. And then I am going to wipe my hands because, as I said to you before, look, when you're doing those, where you're lifting the stamp off the block, it does make your hands a little bit inky. So, and when we take the stencil tape off, we're dealing with the white card, so we don't want to spoil the work. So I'm just giving them a good old wipe. That's it. I think that's all off. Just dry them off a little bit. And then we can remove our stencil tape. I'll try and do it carefully this time. Normally when I do it, I just pull it off really quickly and it all goes a bit haywire. So let's see if I can do it a little bit more gently this time. And we lift that one off. And then hold the stencil down, lift that one off. And then our stencil should just be able to come off. And there you can see, it beautifully frames this particular picture. I really like using this frame for this. Obviously you've got ink on your stencil, some of it's archival ink, so just wash it in warm soapy water and then dry it off and it'll be good to go the next time. And then with the other one, with the sample, I then drew a line. Now you don't have to do this because I think actually this picture looks quite nice without the frame, but if you've gone over a little bit, over your stencil lines a little bit, it just does help. It would help find a pen that works. Let me find a pen that works. Here's one here. Sorry about that. If you've gone over your stencil lines a little bit, it's bled over. This I've told you before. This is quite a good tip to just cover that. You can see there it's gone slightly over the stencil line, and so you can make this black line as thick as your mistake, if you like. So it's quite nice when you spent the time doing a piece of work and then you think, oh, it's ruined it because I've gone over it. This is a great way just to fix that, and also enhances your picture, in my opinion. I quite like putting a little black line round. It's almost like you've matted it without having to put card underneath it. I'm struggling with my fineliner today. I think I probably need to get some new ones. So, but you get the idea. So we put a black line all around that. So basically that's how you make this card. There was my original card. And so I look forward to having you along the next time. Thank you very much.